Now here's a franchise I've addressed before on my channel, but I don't think I talk about it enough. As thanks to my patron Minion of the East, I'm going to review Jak and Daxter the Precursor Legacy for the PlayStation 2. Now keep in mind that for this review, I'm mainly going to be talking about the first Jak and Daxter game, but at the same time, I will give my opinions on Jak 2 and Jak 3 somewhere in here. Now personally, I got into the Jak and Daxter series pretty late compared to most people who have played this game because I grew up with an N64, and I didn't really get the chance to give this game a try during my childhood. It wasn't until, believe it or not, my college years when I finally had the chance to give this game a whirl thanks to the Jak and Daxter collection on the PlayStation 3, along with the Sly Cooper collection, which is another franchise that I might cover sometime in the future. But for now, let's focus on Jak and Daxter the Precursor Legacy. What's the premise? Jak and Daxter are two best friends who live on Sandover Village and are a couple of adventurous troublemakers. So despite the sage Samos's warnings, they go to the forbidden Misty Island and discover a large pool of dark eco, which, of course, Daxter falls into. But rather than kill him, it turns him into a creature known as an Ottsel. Needless to say, he doesn't take it well. Knowing that they can't exactly hide this from Samos, they consult his help, and Samos reveals that the only one capable of helping Daxter is a sage called Gul Acheron who lives in the north, because apparently he's an expert in dark eco. At the same time, Jak and Daxter find out that there's something sinister going on because a bunch of lurkers have started causing chaos around the island. And so, Jak and Daxter embark on a journey to collect artifacts, destroy the lurkers, and, hopefully in time, find the sage Gul Acheron to turn Daxter back to his former self. Now, it's no secret that anyone who has owned a PlayStation 2, or at the very least knows their fair share of video games, have at least heard of Jak and Daxter. And you know what? For good reason. This game's pretty damn good. For its time on the PlayStation 2 when it was released, this game was very aesthetically pleasing, utilizing bright colors and vast environments, and the character designs were pretty awesome as well, and very creative, if I may say. Musically, the game's okay in my opinion. I mean, it's not a bad soundtrack, but it's not exactly memorable if you ask me. And compared to a lot of games of its kind that were prominent at the time, Jak and Daxter had a very well executed narrative and tons of charm to go around, particularly from the nonsense that came out of Daxter's mouth.
Wait a minute! We are not going back to Misty Island! Are we?
Gameplay-wise, this game has a lot to offer, and at the same time, it doesn't really need a lot of explanation. Simply put, Jak and Daxter is a 3D platforming collectathon in its purest form. The world of Jak and Daxter has plenty of nooks and crannies to explore, and by utilizing different abilities that you get throughout your journey, you basically go around, collect items, whether they be precursor eggs or power cells, defeat enemies, solve puzzles, take on boss fights, rinse and repeat. It's admittedly formulaic when you put this game alongside other platforming collectathons like, say, Donkey Kong 64 or Banjo-Kazooie, but at the same time I feel like Jak and Daxter has enough variety and charisma to make it stand out, making it one of the greatest games to ever come out for the early 2000s. So much so that this game would eventually see two sequels within the same genre, and those two games have been rightly praised to be even better than the original. Which in turn leads to my issue with Jak and Daxter the Precursor Legacy. Now please don't misunderstand my words. Despite some minor issues like some pretty atrocious vehicle sections and the occasionally imprecise controls, Jak and Daxter the Precursor Legacy is overall a very solid game. At the same time though, I also think it's a rather dated game, specifically because of how good the sequels are. Everything positive I just said about Jak and Daxter the Precursor Legacy, I can say about Jak 2 and 3 and then some. Now maybe this is just me, but because of that, I can still play Jak 2 and 3 today and still have a good time, but I really can't bring myself to pick up Jak and Daxter the Precursor Legacy for a second playthrough. I start noticing the little things, like those imprecise controls I mentioned earlier, and the fact that the gameplay does get a little monotonous after a while. And after playing the sequels, I can't really imagine Jak, the main character, as a silent protagonist after he's become...
I'm gonna kill Praxis!
Well, that. And I hate to admit it, but I unfortunately don't really have an explanation for this because I can still play the likes of Donkey Kong 64, Banjo-Kazooie, and heck, the first Sly Cooper game, and still have a wonderful time, and yet for some reason, Jak and Daxter the Precursor Legacy just doesn't do it for me anymore. But I implore you, if you've never played Jak and Daxter before, do not let my words keep you from doing that. Every series had to start somewhere, and in terms of Jak and Daxter, its roots are pretty damn solid. It is sweet, pure, good old-fashioned 3D platforming bliss. And if that's your thing, then this game, and in fact the entire series, is definitely worth your time.